But hello and welcome to another R Study Hall. Thank you guys for attending. Today, we're going to be talking about the data lakehouse again, and I'm super excited about this tutorial. I'll hand it over to Karash. But do folks have any questions before we get started about previous discussions on the data lakehouse? Just want to make sure we're all at the same level, I guess, before we keep going. Okay, then without further ado, take it away. Show us some cool stuff. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Nicole. I really appreciate having this forum, and I think there's a lot of cool things I do have to show you, so I'm excited as well. Just as the kind of 2-second summary of what even is this lake house, it is a place to store data and elevate your analytic tooling, essentially. Primarily at this point, it stores EpiTrax and immunizations data, and it stores it in a Google BigQuery database. There's also sort of empty databases people can use if they want to upload and create files and views in those areas. But what I'll talk about today are some more recent developments. If you're interested in the 101, just chat me, or you can look at previous recordings. Yeah, so probably the most exciting thing that I want to share with you all is the change to accessibility of the lakehouse. So you'll recall that access to the lakehouse goes through a virtual machine, right? So you're asked to log into a portal called Core, and Core will kind of open a virtual machine for you. And here I'll share my screen. And once you're in the virtual machine, you can access the lakehouse's tools, right? So this open your virtual machine, and there is my virtual machine with RStudio running inside of it. And you can kind of tell because it's got a Windows taskbar above my normal Windows taskbar, right? It's got a Windows window within my tab. So that's the virtual machine running there. And until I think yesterday, you would not be able to access data from the lakehouse without being inside this virtual machine. But I recognize that in some cases that added a layer of complexity for people, but we also wanted to maintain the security of the system. So we opened access to the lakehouse without being on the virtual machine, but you are required to be on VPN to do so. So at this point, if you were to open a browser window, make sure you log in with your cdphecore.cloud account. You can navigate to console.cloud.google.com or just search BigQuery and you'll find it. And you can access data here where previously you were not able to, provided you are on VPN. Okay. So if you're not on VPN, you'll get here and it'll expand and it'll stop right after the external connections. That's all you'll see, and external connections is nothing. So there's nothing. But if you are on VPN, you will be able to see the data sets if appropriate to you. So probably not all of these, but you'll have like the business vault, the maybe communicable disease areas or immunization areas, that kind of thing. And you'll want to make sure that you're in the right project in the upper left. And this is where you'll toggle between user acceptance testing and production. Okay. But this is an R session, so I won't bore you to death about BigQuery. I just wanted to highlight that that is one way. Obviously, you can write the queries and save views so that R can easily hit those views if you want to have them more available for the rest of your team rather than embedded in your code somewhere. But now what I'll do is I'll walk you through how accessing R works from your local machine if you're not inclined to use the Lakehouse virtual machine. So this is a script I wrote. Is it visible? Do I need to zoom in maybe?
Yeah, could you zoom in just a little bit for me?
Is this a bit better? We can do a little more. Okay.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So you can see I won't install them again, but I just installed a handful of packages, dplyr, ggplot. And then these other two are probably more remarkable. One is Big R Query, which you'll remember from previous messages or previous conversations. That's the R package that facilitates communication with BigQuery. There are other packages if you want to explore them, but this is the one we've been working with most. And R curl, which may be newer to people. rcurl is essentially like a web crawling tool. It just helps you navigate the internet. And I used it here because I wanted to show you guys how to use SFTP processes. And you need that in order to do them, because R does not have, to my knowledge, dedicated like SFTP package. So I found, is this now? Oh, I'm just loading things that are loaded, so that's what makes sense. Okay, so I'll just run through this real quick. So you kind of just load some libraries, right? And then this authentication step here is a little different than it was in the virtual machine. So you'll see that when I run the bqauth command, so this row here, it pops open a browser window, which you just saw here. Then on this browser window, you have to sort of manually authenticate to prove that you are the right person. So again, you have to be on VPN for this to work. Double click, just click your name, say sign into it says Tidyverse, but that's just because bqauth is connected to Tidyverse in the big R package. So just continue. You may see something pop up over here asking you to change your account or something. It depends really which Chrome window this pops up in. I already have my CDPHE core account open, so it's not prompting me, but it might pop up in your state account, in which case it will prompt you. If it prompts you, don't say yes, because you'll get an error and you'll just have to run this thing again. So just keep going through. It'll do the right authentication. As long as this part says core.cloud, you're okay. It doesn't matter what this part up here says.
So would it be maybe best practice to try to have your core.cloud account open in a Google Chrome tab before you try this?
Yeah, I think that might be handy, but it does not a requirement.
Okay.
Just say yes to Tidyverse, continue, and you can see the authentication is complete. We're just going to close this page and get back to our environment. And then the rest of this code will look familiar to you if you've been at previous meetings. So this is just some strings to set parameters. This query is slightly different. All it does is look at the person table, and it pulls the top 10 records. Right? Nothing too fancy, you know. And let me comment this out because no one wants to see what those records really are. This this method basically downloads the results of a query into a data frame. Again, you can have more details in another session, but just to say it in 2 seconds, this method here, the project query, creates a query object from Big R Query, but in itself, the query object does not have any results. So if you try to save that to a data frame, you'll have like a 1-row data frame and it will be useless to you. You need to download the results of the query into the data frame, and that's when you'll see the actual data appear. So you can run that, and you can see kind of it's processing some data, and obviously it won't look at the data, but I can show you there are 10 rows, right? Which I hope so, because I limited it to 10. Okay, cool. And now I'm just going to write it to a CSV. You'll see I made a folder. Well, actually, let me pause for a second. So thus far, what I've shown is you can authenticate to BigQuery without being in the virtual machine as long as you're on VPN. And we've successfully pulled data down from BigQuery by running a query against it. Okay, so at this point, you can do whatever you want with this data. You want to put it on a file somewhere, you can. Because you're on your local machine, it's much more easy for you to access, like KDrive, DrayDrive, stuff like that. So you might be able to drop it in there if it's handy for you. You can push it to Google Sheets. I'll show you the code for that in a minute, and so forth. The other thing I want to underline here, or yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Sorry. I was just going to see, so it looks like it's a relatively safe query practice, right? But do you know if in this process we could accidentally query too much at one time, or is there really, do we worry about that with any of the tables we have in the data lakehouse?
It's cloud-based, so it will scale up as far as resources go. You will not like make someone else make the whole database freeze because you ran for too much data, you know?
Okay.
But they will bill us, so please don't pull tons and tons of data on a routine basis. Someone somewhere will see a bill and maybe come knock on your door.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, just use best practices. If you're just exploring, use a limit, right? This is like, if you're used to SQL, you could use select top 100. Here it's limit 100, right? Okay. If you are pulling large volumes, I would suggest pulling a large volume first time, then pulling deltas. using date filters or whatever. Right? Should pull the difference instead of the whole thing every time. But yeah, nothing will break. Yeah, the other thing I want to draw your attention to is this is manual, right? You cannot automate this process in your desktop, because every time you run BQ auth, you have to go to the browser and say yes. If you run this on a schedule, I'm not sure what will happen. You might have the browser window pop up every time it runs, and that'll be disorienting because you'll have forgotten a scheduled task, or nothing. It might just error. So if you want to automate it, there's still the scheduler in the Lakehouse, and we're exploring options to make that a little more accessible too, but it might be a little longer. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is when I authenticated using this BQ auth, I used my cdphecore.cloud account, right? Now, when you authenticate in the Lakehouse's Jupyter Hub environment, you don't have to give any prompt, right? You're not prompted with a browser window, because the Lakehouse Jupyter Hub is automatically syncing your main account with a service account that does not require manual authentication. Okay, so the account you use has the same permissions as your account, but it is named differently. It's going to say something like jhub-kelizadeh at blah, 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 right? And that account is the one under whose name you're running queries in the JHub environment here, as opposed to in your local machine, you're running them literally on your account. So it's just kelizadeh at cdphe for me. You know? So that's just something to be aware of. Yeah. And feel free to explore this library, BigRQuery. I have seen some provision for non-interactive use cases where you do not have to automatically, manually press those buttons. But preliminary investigations were unrewarding, let's say that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we pulled a bunch of data in. We have it on a data frame. We're halfway there. Now, the next thing I want to show you is less connected to the local versus VM thing, and more connected to an additional tool you might want in your back pocket for sharing data with people. And in fact, this is not even Lakehouse related per se. I'm just using a Lakehouse example. And that is SFTP, and specifically OIT's free-to-use SFTP service called MoveIt. So I'm not sure if any of you have used this before. The interface looks kind of like this. You have some folders, right? Each of them is paired in, out. There's usually a top one too. These Dr. Justina ones are ancient, but you'll have like a Dr. Justina, and then there's in, out within that. If you want to create your own folder structure here, you just put in a ticket to OIT and say, listen, I'd like to have this folder created, please. And they will make it for you. Files last anywhere from 30, I think 60 days is the maximum. They will just be automatically deleted in here. This is not a long-term file storage, right? This is more like you have a partner at another place, you want to hand them a file. External partners can have access to this as well. And like I said, it's all free to use. So just a tool to have in your pocket in case you wanted to. And I thought it might be a cool new application of R that maybe people hadn't experienced before. So if you do choose to use this, you will need to notify OIT that you want a service account, not just a regular account. And that way you can use the MoveIt API to automate pushes and pulls from these folders. And so too could your external partners if they wanted to. So I'll show you a bit of how it looks. First, I'm just going to save this data frame as a table. So there you go. I wrote it into, you see my MoveIt test folder over here, and I've got test.csv. So be redundant. And then I got a handful of basically authentication files, right? So I've got a private key and a public key. So I'm just going to save those here, the file paths, so that the system knows where to look. And give the name of my user and the host so we can get those in. I think I forgot to do the users. Okay. And then I'm giving the file path of the actual file I'm going to use. And I'm giving the file path of the folder in MoveIt that I'm going to use. Unfortunately, I don't have access to this for my personal account, so I can't show you what it looks like here. But in order to prove to you that this works, what I can show you is a terminal window where I have connected to it, and I can show you like the ls of this folder. So if you'll forgive me the clunkiness of terminal, down here you can see that I kind of went to the right folder. I ran cat config to see the different parameters of the folder that I'm in. And then I just ran SFTP method on the MoveIt test hostname, right? So that establishes the connection in the terminal. And then kind of looked at what's there. I was in the root directory, the Lakehouse one. I went down to out, and you can see the list of files there. And the rest is me removing the file I had previously uploaded so I could make this more compelling. So if you do ls, oops. Let's see, is this going to work? Oh, did I go to the wrong folder? Oh, sorry, I closed the connection. Let me just open it again. Okay. So then SFTP move it test connected. And we
Just
can
so
see
folks are aware, this is not our syntax right now. Just FYI, we're in a
yes, sorry.
different world. So just don't be like, I don't know how to do this in R. You shouldn't.
Yeah, maybe this isn't really worth showing you guys if.
No, it's good. It's good to see that it worked. But I just didn't want folks to be like, I'm so behind. You're not. This is a totally different type of language.
Yeah, this is, we're just using the terminal and getting excited here. So I thought there was. How do I? Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to go to the out folder. So now you can, ls just lists the files in the folder, right? So I've got a couple of handy files that I use for testing. And the new file, notably, the one called test CSV, is not in that folder, right? You just see test file, test file. Good. Okay, so we've specified all this. I'm going to create the URL. You can use this same string, and I'll drop the code over to Nicole after the call. Then this saves a list of options so that it's usable in the next method. And then this is where our curl comes in. Our curl is, like I said, a web crawling tool. So it is not primarily for SFTP, though you can use it this way because the SFTP thing's on the internet, so it works, right? And if you just run this one real quick, what happened? Okay, we authenticated, so it's probably like a file path thing. Sorry, guys. Oh yeah, the file path was still looking at the wrong thing. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, there we go. So, okay, now if we go over to the terminal, we can ls, and now the list does include test CSV. So that will sort of show you that it's there. And you can also download from that SFTP server in the same way. And that would just, I'll show you how that looks. It's pretty straightforward. Because of our curl is so generalized, there's not like a specific method for just pull down the file, but I'll show you how it ends up looking. So of course we need the library. This is all the same as before. We're just setting some parameters. And then I'm using a text file just to make it a little simpler. But the file's there. Same URL, some options. And then the method we're going to use now is called getURL. GetURL just pulls everything from a URL, right? So if you run getURL on a web page, like in this method, you can see that the text variable that I saved over here is literally just a huge string of the entire web page HTML. So you can run whatever regex and stuff on that to find the part you care about. But what I did in this case is the URL I specified is just that one text file. So when I run get URL, I'm just going to get the string inside the text file. And you can see that data is just this string here. This is a test. And then what I do next is I open a connection, write the file, and then I close the connection. So now there is a file called test file, and it contains that beautiful string. This is a test. So I haven't tried it out with CSV. I assume it's similar, but you would have to just and download it from there. So if your partner is dropping off a file there for you to work with, you read it in like this, do some crazy cool R math, and then upload it again. And you can automate the whole process. Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, just noting, if folks transition it over to CSV and you run into any troubles, you might look through the functions that you're using from the rcurl package and see if any of them are text file specific or explicitly exclude CSV, and then just see what other functions are in that package that allow for CSV. I imagine it's probably fine, but there are weirdly some packages that only want to work with like really simple text files. But I assume this one is fine.
Yeah, I just tried it actually, and you can see data in a bunch of comma separated values.
Okay.
I made a mistake of saving it as a text though, so let me fix this real quick. Cool, and now we have this CSV.
Excellent.
Cool.
Okay.
Seems to work. All right, cool. Now let's close the connection. Yeah, so I just wanted to illustrate that. I don't know if you guys had a lot of SFTP use cases, but it is one more way to get data in and out of the Lakehouse. And it's nice in that it can be automated, works with external partners, it's free, and it has a good level of security around it.
Yeah, we've definitely used MoveIt in the COVID side, I think with School of Public Health, but Alicia probably knows more about that. But
Nice.
thank you. Anything else that you want to show us today?
Okay, last thing, I will show you, I thought maybe we did Google Sheets before, but I will talk about it again just to make sure, and I think maybe we ran into problems last time. So you'll forgive me, I haven't set this up on my local one yet, but it's the same kind of idea. So this is another little script you can use to push things to Google Sheets now from the Lakehouse, yeah? Where is the thing? Hopefully legible. Okay, so I just use Google Sheets and Big R Query. I'm in the JHub, so when I run BQ auth, I don't need to do the kind of manual intervention. It just picks up my service account. These are the strings at which point you're probably familiar with them. And then this is actually a real thing we do at this point. It's in kind of productionized. I'm pulling the list of Epitrax users from the UAT environment and pushing it to a spreadsheet for some of the Epitrax admin team to work with. Yeah. So this is the query. Just select star from a view I built. Pull it down into a data frame using the same method described previously. And then this is probably nothing new to you guys. It's just sheet_write. Take the data frame, give it the link, and of course specify the sheet so we can run that. Now, what I want to show you that is a little bit unique about this is the way the permissionings has to be handled. If you go to this sheet, no, let me get it with the right person. So this is the user summary for Epitrax. You'll notice the accounts that are shared with it have a couple of oddities in them, and that's the service accounts that I mentioned prior. So if you look at the permissions here, you'll see me, of course, and Rebecca and so forth, but you also see this JHub account. So this is my Lakehouse service account, and I had to share the sheet with that account so that the account could push to this. You wouldn't need to do this if you use the local one because you're using your account. So if you share it with yourself, that's okay. You will have to share it with your cloud account though. So this account here, my state account, does me no good if I'm trying to use these different tools because in those I'm authenticated as my CDPHE core.cloud account. Yeah. So you'll either have to share with your service account or your personal account. And then if you want to schedule tasks, you also need to share with the scheduler account because the scheduler runs using a service account as well. Yeah, go ahead.
So where do you find those account name?
You mean you can't just memorize this big long string?
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah. If you ever have a question, you can just chat us and I'll let you know. The structure of the string is always jhub-your username at, and then this part is always the same too. It's, I mean, I can't expect you to remember it, but CDPHE, Lakehouse, Infra, UAT, IAM, gserviceaccount.com. But anytime you have a question, I would just chat you. It takes 2 seconds to look it up.
Thank you.
And then the scheduler one is always the same for each organization. So this one is CDPHE because that's the org I'm in. But if you're communicable disease, it'll say like COMDIS here, or if you are immunization, something along those lines, DHS, so forth.
Oh, I have a follow-up question. Just to be back. Do all of us have a way to access the EpiTrack now, or it's not deployed for other users yet? So
No, that's a great question. Yes, you all have access to data from EpiTracks in the Lakehouse. So if you were to go to the Lakehouse, you will not see the replicas themselves because they contain data from teams outside of communicable disease, and they're not really formatted for analytics anyway. So what you'll see is the business vault, where there is data from EpiTracks. I'm not going to show it here because this is recorded at its PII, but that would be in like person profile. You would find all the names and so forth. And when you run a query against this table, you will see that the record source says EpiTracks, and the record owner will say something like communicable disease or DEHS or wherever you're affiliated with. So data does flow into both UAT and production environments of the Lakehouse from their corresponding EpiTracks environments. If you were to go to the EpiTracks application, enter a new case, you should see it in this Lakehouse in a matter of hours. Does that answer your question?
okay, sounds good. Just didn't know that before until.
No problem.
Thank
If you decide you want to start poking around, let me know. I'm happy to give you a tour and show you where stuff is.
Right. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Well, that's all I had. Thank you for hearing me, Nicole.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for showing us. I'm excited to test some of these new things out.
Pleasure.
Any other questions surrounding the Data Lakehouse and our studio? Okay, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording and just people be thinking about if you have any general